Welcome to Sacred Space. Welcome to Sacred Space. We are here today with Dr. Ora Horn Prouser, who is the CEO and Academic Dean of the Academy for Jewish Religion. And we also have with us a very special guest, Ayal Prouser, who is a circus artist and choreographer. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Really happy to be here.
So tell me a little bit about the Sacred Arts program and how it got started at the Academy for Jewish Religion.
Yeah, sure. So AJR, really a good number of years ago, started just naturally having art sessions at our various communal programs. We have 2 communal programs a year where our whole community is together. And we started incorporating an art session in, and we realized people loved it. So as we continued, we realized there's more to it than just having an art session. And so the art sessions were first in terms of interpreting biblical text, whether we were doing it through music or through bibliodrama or through dance or visual arts, paper midrash, all different kinds. But we realized that there's more to this than just using the text as a jumping off point for the art. And so our thought was, how do we actually use the art to process the text? Whether it's through visual arts or whether it's embodying the text when we're using different movement. And that was a major shift. And when I would say we really started calling it sacred arts as opposed to bringing art into the retreat. And we started doing this with texts from the Bible. But then we said, well, what if we try to understand a Talmudic text? And then we pushed ourselves even harder and said, let's not choose a gem of a story from the Talmud. Let's choose a section that is just a great halachic argument, an argument about Jewish law. And how do we use the art to understand the structure of the argument? And one of the first places we went in thinking about that was to circus arts. And our question was, how do we embody the process of thinking through building circus pyramids? And that was, I think, the first time we brought Ayal in to bring circus arts into our study of Talmud. And I should say, we still think we're either the first or the only place that has studied Talmud through circus arts.
Yeah, you called me one day and said, how do you think we would be able to study the structure of a Talmudic text through circus arts? And I was immediately through human pyramids. And so there's a certain amount of rhetoric that overlaps. Does it stand on itself? Does it stand on an argument? Is it in balance with each other? Is it in tension with each other? That all those words kind of are very yielding to studying and being as much of you would use that same terms in a literary approach to studying as you would a circus approach to studying. And that's what we did. We went over a little bit of how to think about circus, how to think about human pyramids, that they're a little different all over the world. So what style of pyramids you're doing, whether it's a Moroccan style or a Russian style or a Chinese style. And then we did some pyramids and broke up, and some people built pyramids. There's one group that didn't want to leave the ground at all, so they did kind of a contact improv kind of weight sharing approach to pyramids. And then there was one group that didn't want to do any sort of acrobatics or movement, so they drew it on paper but marked for the different styles of pyramids. There's real ranges of approaches. But it's like really in the phenomenology of circus where the studying happens, and it's kind of been developed more since that first workshop.
It also sounds like you set it up in a way that it's safe for people of all abilities, so you can participate in it if you're comfortable climbing or staying on the floor. And so, but the impact, I'm guessing, is unique and it's accessible to each participant, even if they're not flying through the air, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. At one retreat that got fairly contentious in other sessions, we used circus as like a moment of recharging and community settling and rebuilding, and we built one pyramid that incorporated everybody in the room, and obviously that had people at a lot of different abilities and comfort levels, but we were like passionate about getting everybody into this pyramid, so it's a real spectrum, very accessible, and
really builds trust, I think, among a group in a very special way.
I think it's important when we use the word pyramids, many people think of like a cheerleader pyramid. And it's important that circus pyramids they may be like cheerleader pyramids, but they may be a million other different models. So it's important that everyone's not just thinking of 3, 2, 1, and that's a pyramid. The other thing I would say is we're very attentive to people having different abilities, and it helps that I have my own limitations. So we know that if they're able to include me, then we're okay. Our goal is, what is the process we're going through? And so that process sometimes can even build on the fact that someone is less comfortable or feeling less balanced. We can use that in our work as well.
So let's talk about the process a bit and what text we might be exploring today as an example of what you do during the Circus Arts program.
So before we get into the text itself, just to give you a little more of the underlying principles, one of the things we find is that it's helpful to think about the biblical characters. And we think about, and these are the kind of words we use, which you'll see have benefit in thinking through circus. So are they in tension with each other? Are they balanced? Are they being supported by someone? Do they know who's supporting them? Can they see who's supporting them? Or can they not see that they're being supported? They don't realize it. And what we try to do is to recognize that thinking through the body is different than thinking through the mind. And as Jews, we do a lot of thinking through the mind. And our standard way of studying, which, by the way, I love, is sitting around a table reading text together. And I want to be clear that in no way am I against that way of studying. It is absolutely what I love and what I've done for most of my life. But we also have to recognize two things. One is that sitting around the table is not the best method for everybody. And second of all, for everyone, even those who love sitting around the table, thinking with your body gives you a different approach and a different way of thinking.
Absolutely.
So today we're going to be looking at the Garden of Eden narrative in the Bible, and it's in Genesis chapter 3, and it's a good text. What we find is the texts that are really fun to work with are ones that have several characters and that interact. And we include God as one of the characters that we tend to embody, which is always interesting.
We were studying a bunch of texts that we felt had a sense of instability within characters. Like we did Akedah, the Binding of Isaac, and we did the Sister Wives stories. And we were just like, try wire while reflecting on and I supported them on the wire. Like we were just like, go walk on a tight wire.
Although it's still very wobbly.
Yeah, you still.
Even if you're supported.
Yeah, absolutely. They absolutely still felt unstable. And then we had people with both stories just totally change their perspective on the story. On a wire, even if you're looking still and controlled, you're constantly navigating instability, stability, like somewhere between the two. Like there's constant micro balances, which means that you're never fully balanced.
You know, in a way, it's so much an analogy just for life in general, because we want to be in control, we want to be balanced, and so many things throw us off all the time. To have this experience as part of school and training, I think also gives you a perspective and an ability to be prepared for when you go in blind and you're expecting one thing to work out one way, and then you take something else away or you learn something else from it, and it's so rich just as an experience all by itself.
It's so true, and I'll tell you, working together in circus is an amazing community building experience. So just the fact that, first of all, people are just having fun together. It's fun. It's different and it's fun. But also, you're depending on other people. People are balancing you. You're balancing them, right? So there's this tremendous community building aspect to it, which is just valuable no matter what.
So let's go outside and be flexible and experience some circus arts together.
Thank you so much.
Just a quick reminder to subscribe to the channel, which will support AJR, and also hit that bell icon, and you'll get a reminder the next time an episode drops.
With sacred arts, this is like your toolbox for research. So sometimes when I talk about making a circus act, I'll say like tricks or like words forming a sentence that will make a paragraph that leads to the book, which is the full show or the full act or whatever. With sacred arts, this is more like learning how to study. So this is like your literary approach. So like what we now have is different perspectives from which to enter into the text with. So if we're looking at the Garden of Eden narrative, then now it's like we have three different pyramids, all very different. We have one with people facing each other. We have one with people facing away from each other. No one can see each other really, except for the middle person. And we have one where everybody's facing the same way, working as a cohesive group. There's like some people who have some knowledge, there's some people who have less knowledge, and they kind of make you think about their relationship with each other. Like if the ground person were to be God in this narrative, they'll be able to see everybody. And that's already like a little too literal or like a little too performative or too mimetic for the sacred arts approach. But it's more like, how will that person feel with the knowledge of everyone else, only having partial knowledge, and that visceral experience you might have while taking care of people with that knowledge? That's the research. That's the circus approach.
I just want to say the idea of God being on the bottom is so novel to most people. Like that idea that God is observing from the bottom as opposed to looking down.
You want to try it?
So fresh. I would try
As
it.
God?
I'll be God.
Being God?
Yes! Wow, what a burden!
So that's a real question. If you were thinking of God being on the bottom, how did that feel?
It was very stressful. The load of everybody was on me. I had to be very careful, make sure nobody fell, especially Michael. And I knew you would go next with you. And that you would come crashing down on me as well. So I would be crushed in the process. And yeah, that was like a really like core, you know, you talk about having a strong core, like God needs a strong core.
And lean forward. Yeah. There you go.
Wow! That was so fun!
So interesting, just like you're not a character in this story, but you are like kind of the God-ish character, like you're in charge of like making sure everyone is safe.
And one of the best readings I've heard of The Spotter is that the spotter represented God's creation of gravity. And I think that was just such a beautiful reading. It does that me fine.
Beautiful. That's really nice.
Yeah.
That's really nice. Everything that we're doing, I think some of it looks easy, and one of the beauties is Ayal helps us all feel like we could run away and join the circus and they would hire us because we're so good. But certainly at AJR, we make it clear to our students, and we make clear in every context that this only works with a professional, because otherwise people can get hurt.
I did have one thought before we move on, that there's a comfort in knowing that it's not going to last forever and this is going to end. Like this too shall pass kind of thing.
Between your two different readings, I think you really see the beauty of sacred arts. That it really shows the expansiveness of the sacred arts method, that you will get new readings and new ways to get to old readings.
It is with great joy that I'm going to introduce you to my friend and colleague, Cantor Michael Kasper, who is the Dean of Cantorial Studies and the Director of Placement and Student Life. Welcome, Michael.
Hi.
Thanks for joining me today.
Pleasure.
So I'd love for you to share a little bit about what brought you to AJR as an adult student and the journey that you had there that now led you to the position that you have.
Sure. So I have a very long and checkered past that got me to AJR. I started off as a kid instrumentalist. I was a very serious trumpet player, and then I started playing drums and then percussion, and I played all through my first year of college. But somewhere along the way, when I was 15, I started working as an accompanist at New Jersey Ballet, which was a really high-level regional ballet company. And I played for all the jazz classes, and I got to accompany one of the absolute greatest jazz dancers of the last 50, 100 years, Matt Maddox. And when I got to college, I took dance as a gym requirement. So I just got completely hooked. And I then finished college as a dance major, came to New York, danced with a lot of wonderful companies. I did a really fabulous apprenticeship with Twyla Tharp. Went on to have my own company for about 10, 12 years. And then in my 30s, retired and went back to school to become a social worker. And then I went back to school again to become a psychoanalyst. And I've been practicing as an analyst and a therapist for the last 30 plus years. And along the way, I always wanted to be a cantor, even since I was a kid. And when my last child, my third daughter, went off to college, I figured it was finally time for me to be able to go back to school again. So I went back to school, went to AJR, and started cantorial studies. And here I am.
That's a journey.
Yeah, a good one.
And really speaks also to if there's something you really want to do in your life, no matter what age you are or where you are in your life, that you should absolutely go for it and find a place for yourself and do it.
I could not agree more.
And not only did you do it, you're now the Dean of Cantorial Studies.
I know!
And the Director of Placement and Student Life.
It's an amazing story, and it's an amazing life.
It is. You are also very involved in the sacred arts. Will you share a little bit about what you do for that program?
Sure. AJR has pioneered this track of courses we call sacred arts. The sacred arts for us is having to do with writing, prose writing, poetry writing, journaling, fine arts, any kind of music, circus arts. And what I do is bring dance and movement into the sacred arts curriculum. And so when I think about movement or dance and sacred arts, it takes no expertise in the field of dance and movement to do what I think is important to get out of this. And the other thing is that I can't divorce myself from the fact that I'm also a therapist and an analyst. And so a lot of my work has to do with the way I look at Bible from a psychological perspective, and in addition to a narrative perspective. So what I like to do is put together what I call movement puzzles. And in those movement puzzles, we learn something about the characters that we're looking at in the Bible.
But I'm curious too, like if a person is of a certain age or can't, let's say, walk or has limitations to their use of parts of their body, would it be comfortable to share something that one could do in a chair?
Absolutely. And in the way that I think about fashioning these movement puzzles, I always imagine that it could be done sitting down. So for instance, when we go outside in a bit, we're going to take a look at the Garden of Eden story. And my focus is on how does Eve think about the fact that she's being told by the snake that it's going to be okay to eat the fruit from the tree. And the way I've devised this puzzle has to do a lot with balance and with being off balance as you get closer and closer and closer to the tree. So if I was worried about being off balance and standing up, I could imagine doing it sitting down. You could just tilt your head and find that place where if you keep on moving, you're going to fall over, right? That you can't really hold yourself up. And that will get you to the same exact place as jumping around and being outside, on one leg in a precarious position. So I think what I'm going to ask everybody to do is imagine that the center of the space that we're going to be in is the physical space that the tree of life inhabits. And I'm going to ask everybody to make up a series of 3 to 4 easy movements. And each movement will be something that puts you off balance. And so you'll be in a movement that's off balance, and then you'll recover from it. And once we have our first movement that we can repeat, we'll make up a second movement. And then we'll make up a third movement. And so now let's say we have 3, we'll string them together, and now we have a short phrase of 3 different movements, each one involving an off-balance moment and a recovery moment. And the idea is, how can we use these movements in an improvisational way around the tree so that we get as close to the tree as we possibly can without encroaching on the tree? And then we're going to talk about it. And my interest here is in what does it feel like to know that you can't touch something, but you want to get as close to it as you possibly can.
Did anybody have this experience? And I'm really curious about this because this was my experience.
Is it scary to be there? Are you drawn to getting closer and closer? How comfortable are you? And we'll see what happens.
Thank you so much for being with us today, for taking the time to share this beautiful sacred arts experience and being part of our sacred space.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It's a great pleasure.
And now we have an opportunity to hear from one of the AJR students. We have rabbinic student Lily Lucy with us today. Welcome, Lily.
Thank you.
So this has been an incredible day of circus arts and movement, and I'd love to hear from a student's perspective how this has impacted your education at AJR and what have been the most meaningful takeaways from the program.
Sure. So the Sacred Arts curriculum is one of my favorite aspects of AJR because AJR has put the effort and the thought into elevating the curriculum through sacred arts. It really embodying the text has allowed me to view the text in a completely different way as a student, but also I find that my takeaways are really, really solid. So when I come away from a sacred arts class, I feel like I'm changed internally, my own spiritual life, my own interaction with the text is different, but also I know what the takeaways are. I know it's become so much a part of me, the interaction with the text in this way. that I can bring it back to others and I can bring it back to my community in a really solid way that I know how I've interacted with it because of the way it's embodied through the sacred arts courses.
It's so beautiful. The idea that you just had this profound experience that you will never forget.
That is so true. And also the connections with one another that this kind of class fosters with the classmates, and knowing how to carry that forward because we've experienced that kind of community building.
So beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us today and for being a part of this amazing program and just for sharing your amazing energy with us on Sacred Space.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's program and you're interested in finding out more, go to ajr.edu for more information. Join us next time when we will learn about AJR's support and programming for students working toward military chaplaincy. I'm Elizabeth Sternlieb, and this is Sacred Space.